Welcome back to this lesson in paint abilities using artificial intelligence generated images to create a design. And so this is the design we started in last week's lesson. Here's the barn and the wildflower field in front of it. And we've completed the barn in lesson 1. So if you didn't see that, please go back and watch lesson 1, which aired last week, and then come back and watch this one to complete it. So today, let's get started. We're going to get overhead and work on all the other details in this design. So we've got clouds to put in the sky, we've got trees and the meadow, and then grasses and flowers. So let's get going with that. First thing I'm going to do is work on these clouds in the background. And I've got a 3/4 inch super soft white natural hair mop. This is goat hair, so it's really soft and it's got a wonderful rounded edge on it, nice and fluffy. And we're going to use this to create our clouds. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to load this with some floating medium into the brush. So I'm pushing, kind of working that in to my brush, and then I'm going to come and pick up white on 1/2 of this brush. So this is Wicker white, and then we've got our deep ocean blue. That's, or no, I'm sorry. We have our Cobalt. That's our background color for our sky. So I'm going to add, let's keep adding a little more white into this brush, and then just get a touch of the Cobalt on the back corner, bottom corner of this brush. So it's mostly white with a little bit of this Cobalt. All right. And then I'm going to come and get just a touch of medium gray with that Cobalt and work that into my brush. Okay. So white on the front. All right. So working these clouds, I'm going to take this brush and we're going to kind of tilt the handle back so it's at an angle with the back end scrubbing into the canvas and the light top end creating little fluffy clouds. Okay, so let's come up here to the top and we're going to make swirls with that back corner pushed down. All right, get a little more white and we'll come right in front of that. And you can favor that white by tilting forward and making swirls, and then favor the dark color by tilting back on that handle. Right, and you see how that's creating that wispy cloud look. Okay, and we're just going to keep doing that, kind of rocking back and forth. White for the tip. We can come up and then down. And then down here, as it's coming towards the horizon, let's get a little bit more of that Cobalt and medium gray. Yeah, that's a good color. So we're just going to kind of scrub that in at the base and bring that over here a little further, then tip the white coming towards our barn and making swirls. Add a little dark in there. Tip back to the dark, tip forward to the light. Okay, so that's adding those clouds on the right side. So you can kind of push that darker color in there. It's picking up some of that white, so I'm going to come back and get my gray and blue and tap that in there. And then tap the white in front. Notice the swirling motion I'm making. I'm kind of sweeping with that light edge. And this is very wet, so I'm going to just kind of let that set up. Now, as we hit next to the barn here, we're going to just let that kind of fade away. And if we come over the edge of our barn, we can take a clean, damp brush and just wipe that right out. We don't want that sitting in front of the barn. Okay, so a little bit of a glare there, but that's our cloud. And then we can come behind the barn and we'll do another one up here. So lots of fluff in this one. So I'm favoring that white edge first. Sweeping, and then favor the dark here. Kind of pushing that into the right side of this cloud. We're going to come right down to the edge of our barn. And then bring this over a little more white. So these clouds are lit up from the left, which means the sides are going to be the brightest. And then there'll be shadow cast by its own self. All right, now if I went over my barn anywhere, again, come in with that clean, damp brush, and we can take that right back off. Okay, and then we'll finish on the left. Let's continue bringing this over. Get a little more of that gray with the cobalt and white, and then white on the front. So dark down here, and then light on the edge, on the left edge. And we'll take that right off. Not too worried about this right here because we're going to put some trees along that line, but it's good to keep it clean. Okay, now let's come up here. Add some of that light and then push that dark in. And tip towards the light again. And then I'm going to finish with some stronger white right here. And here. So I think that's looking pretty good. And then up here we had some wispy clouds. So I'm just going to kind of take my brush and streak a little bit of that. Okay, so I think that's looking pretty good. I'm happy with that. All right, so I'm going to clean that brush and dry it really well so that we have it ready to use for the next time. So you can rake it in your brush basin one direction, flip it over one direction, and then you want to squeeze all that water out, right? And then fluff it back up. And that gets it pretty dry, at least that I can use it again for this project. Okay, so now we have our clouds in place. Let's start working on our background foliage. and then coming forward with our wildflowers. So I need, first of all, let's work with this 1/2 inch mop here. And we have our greenery colors. So I'm again going to just put a little bit of medium in here just to thin the paint a little bit. So it's, because it's in the background, we don't want it really dark. Get a little bit of this sap green here on that brush, and we can come right up here a little bit stronger. We can come right up here and then turn it so that it's horizontal or vertical, and you can tap up a little bit, create a little tree top here on the ridge so that that ridge isn't perfectly smooth, right? It is somewhat smooth, but it looks a little better if you have some height. And we'll come right up upside this tree here, or the barn. Okay. All right, and then on the left side, we can do a little bit of that too. Just push up a few. And then kind of smooth it out. Now here there's going to be a big tree, so I don't actually need to come that far over. So back behind the barn, we'll come right up next to it. Okay. Now let's just add a touch of, a touch of gray in with this green. Right in here. A little bit more gray with the green. And we'll come down this hillside here. And then we can pick up a little bit of citrus and put a little light area right there. Grab some yellow ochre and then start to come forward. So the lighter colors, a little more yellow ochre, maybe a touch of white with that. There we go. And then we're going to come around here. A little more white with the ochre and a touch of citrus with that. It's going to brighten it up just a little more. And then we'll come towards our path here. Back here, let's do same. Ochre and white, touch of citrus. I'm going to grab just a hint of this coffee latte right in here. And let's put a little of that right there also. All right, now let's come back to our sap and work that in here. And this is where our tree is going to sit right here off that left corner of the barn. A little more sap. Let's get a touch of medium with that. And we'll come dark at the base of the barn right here. And then especially over here, because it's casting a shadow, this barn on this side. Sap green. right there. And then right in here. Just kind of shove it up, push on it a little bit, create some texture right in there. It's starting to come closer, so you're going to see more texture and less smooth. Right, and then same thing here. So pushing a little medium, sap green. Let's get just a touch of citrus on the back corner. And we'll start to push up a little bit here. And same here. Now I want a dark edge along this side of the path right there. And then lighter up here, a little citrus. Now let's get a little bit of white with that citrus. Lighten it up just a little, right in here. And then I want to take and sweep up at the base of that barn, just on the very tips of the bristles. So handle has to be straight and you're flicking up. Let's get a little bit of dark. So we'll reverse the brush a little bit, right there. Especially coming back here and off the back side of the barn. Add a little there too. And then flip the brush, a little bit of light. And come right in here and do the same. Flip it back, a little dark at the base. Okay. I think let's do a little bit of that right here too. A bit of that light color. Get a little dark here. All right, so now I want to finish with with this brush, working in this area. I can actually do it a lot faster if I use my bigger mop brush. So let's clean that one and get the one we were using before. This is the 3/4 inch mop. All right, and if you look at that picture right in here, it's got, so you're starting to pick up some of those field colors of the wildflowers. But first we need all the grass stems, etc. So let's get some, well, first let's pick up a little medium and get some sap green. Okay, and a little bit of citrus, work that in with medium. And let's work from this left side here. So first we're going to tap in a little bit of a shrub edge right there. And then we're going to pull up a little more medium till it feels like it's moving. There we go. So it's kind of dark over here. Just get a little more sap in there. Leave some of that light color showing also. So you want to do this in layers. Work from the back to the front. And it's darker over here. And see, very quickly you can get all kinds of grasses and stems, or the impression of that. But move around, don't work it like a hedge. You have to kind of work in a circular manner. And let's get a little bit of yellow ochre now. And we'll come back here and do a few of those in here as well. And don't forget, when you're working on the wrapped canvas, you want to be aware of your edges, so make sure you put that color on the edges as well. Color and movement. There. All right, so this comes all the way over to here. But we don't want to come that down here in that area yet because we need to work all this. So let's wipe this brush, get more medium. And I want to get some of my field colors, field flower colors. So I have another plate here set up with color, and I'll just real quick show you what that is. Violet Pansy, more Cobalt hue, Wicker White, Magenta, Pueblo. This is matte color Alfalfa, and some burnt umber, and that's going to be used primarily for our tree. All right, but I want to get some of this magenta right now, but I don't want it really strong, so I'm working it in with that green. It's just a hint of magenta with the green, and we're going to come right through here. You don't want to work it too much because magenta with green will give you a brown, and we want more of a pinkish green color. All right, so right in there. And let's get a touch of white with that. There we go. Okay. And now let's pick up a little bit of the blue, the Cobalt. Over here. A little more pink. Get some white with that pink. We're getting closer, so we're starting to actually see color. All right, now I want to wipe that off again. Come back to our green colors. And let's get that sap, medium, a little bit of citrus, and a little bit of yellow ochre on that citrus, okay? And we'll finish this up here with these stems and grasses. So you're overlapping what you just put in and working your way towards the bottom of the canvas. This is all going to be background for our wildflowers. So I'm going to get a little darker now. More sap. A little bit more medium. Help that move. There we go. Okay, so you can see that dark now coming across this way. And I think that's pretty good. All right, so we can be done with that brush, and then I'm gonna let that kind of set up before we add all our wildflowers. So while we're doing that, let's come over here and work on our trees next to the barn. So I've got this 8 flat again, and I'm gonna come to my other colors here. So let's get that damp. And then load with some burnt umber. Okay, so right over here, we're going to have a tree that's seated right about there. Yeah, so it comes about halfway down the wall of the barn, right about there. Okay, so we're going to come up on the chisel And we're going to just do a real quick trunk here. It's way far away, so it just needs to be a dark brown color, okay? And then just so that we have something to go for the shape, just an idea of where the branches would be, I'm just going to lay this in. You won't see most of this, and it comes right all the way up here. So it's a pretty tall tree. Okay, and then over here, we'll have a smaller one. This is way in the distance, right about there. So we'll just put the trunk in. We have another one right about there, and even further right about there. All right, now while I have this color on my brush, let's get a little bit of white side loaded. A little more. And we're going to do a real quick little fence right here. So split rail fence kind of comes through. So we've got a post here, and it goes behind the barn and comes around. So we're just going to knock that in there real quick. Just a little hint of it, see there? And we get a little bit darker there on the back halves of these and on the bottom of the post. Okay. All right, now let's come back to our mop, our 1/2-inch mop, and we're going to put in our tree. So I'm going to make sure this is nice and fluffy and fairly dry. All right, so first thing I want to do is let's put in our dark colors. So let's get some sap here, sap green. And I'm going to put that on about 2/3 of the brush. I'm going to leave the front quarter fairly empty. All right, and then let's come right up here with our tree. Okay, so the base of the tree is going to have the dark. Let's push this out just a little bit. I'm just kind of giving this a wiggle, widening my brush. So the base of our tree right here. Now that's pretty dark. I'm going to add just a little bit of this alfalfa in with it. I don't want it quite that dark. That's better. Okay, so we're hitting on just on the bristles, tapping like you would a scruffy brush. And we'll get a little more of that sap here too. So sap and alfalfa combined. And we'll kind of fill in that right 2/3 of the tree. All right, now we're going to start to tap the front quarter of this brush into regular, just straight alfalfa. Pounce it out. And we'll come right up here. Get a nice rounded top. You can tip back to the dark color on the back side of that. Come back to that alfalfa. Come right through the middle here. So darken there. Right there. I want that a little darker. And then right through here. And what that does is it makes it look rounder because this is coming in front. Now you've got layers of foliage. let some of that blue, see how I left some of the blue showing? And then to finish, let me get just a little bit more, a little bit of white on that alfalfa. And we'll come right out here. Right there. Okay, so there's that tree. Just a few branches hanging down in the back to round it out in the back. Okay. Now I can take the corner of my brush here and tap in some shrubs. And I think, you know what, instead of that, I'm going to use my Scruffy, or even a small flat brush might work better. So we'll come back to that. Okay, so this tree over here, I got a bouncy canvas. So I'm just going to set that down while I hold it. Bring this over. Get the shape with the dark to the right. And then tap the light on the left. I'm going to add just a little bit of citrus in with the sap on this back side because the background is darker. Citrus and sap back here. I want this to show up a little better. And then the white with the alfalfa. There. So just a little hint of a tree. Okay, and then there's one here. Actually, it would make better sense to start with the smaller ones. And so you can just kind of tap that right in there. Tap that one in there. Get a little bit of dark. There. Right, so just have fun with those. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and put that brush in water, and I want to come to my flat brush, and this is that 8 flat again, and I'm going to get some coffee latte right here and a little bit of the alfalfa. Right, and so right in here at the base of these trees, you want to set those. And a little bit of green, darker green here for a shadow. Right there. And then the same thing over here. All right, so just to finish off all these trees in the background, let's get a little more of that sap green. Now this is on the 8 flat sap green. I can come right in here and just kind of tap in, grab the alfalfa, a little bit of white. Now that's a lot of white, so let's wipe the brush off and kind of tap that in. I don't want it so bright white. All right, come back to our sap green. We can tap in another one back here. You actually can take the brush and smash it a little bit and then tap that in. Get the darker green. Right, and then just set that right there. Okay, So I'm pretty happy with all of that. I want to darken right around here, just to kind of set that edge of that path. And we can just put a little bit of movement back in here so it's not so flat looking. There. Just with what's on my brush. All right, so now we can work on our wildflower field in the foreground. So the first thing I want to do is let's take and put these taller flowers in. I want to take my Scruffy. This is a 1/4 inch Scruffy, right? And you don't wet these before you use them. They start out dry. And we're going to just get some magenta and white and half and half load that, okay? And so let's come right in here, and I remember I've got a little tippy canvas, so we're just going to pounce straight up and down. A little more of the magenta. There we go. A little more white. Tap off that heavy paint, get some white. That's better. I want these fluffy, so I think this is a newer brush because it's not as fluffed out. So I'm going to have to give it a little push. Okay. Put one more here. All right, and then we have, let's add just a partial one right there. Okay, and then down here we have a little cluster of them as well. So come right in here. Okay, so it's a pretty little cluster of those. I'm going to wipe off that brush, get as much of that pink out of there as I can on paper towel. And let's come get some blue. So we've got some cobalt here and some white. And occasionally I'm going to pick up some of this violet pansy. Oops, sorry. So cobalt and white. And we're going to come right up here. Yeah, right up there. Right in front of that one. Let's get a little bit of that violet pansy with the cobalt and then keep the other half white. Okay, we'll come right in here and add one that stands up a little closer. So a little bit more white in there. So it's violet pansy and blue and then white. I'm just kind of picking and choosing some of these flowers that I want to put in here. I'm not doing every single flower that the AI generator created. And don't feel like you have to. It's just inspiration, like I said. And so this is a process of you decide once you have the vision and the layout, you can decide which parts of that you want to keep and which parts you don't. Okay, so then we have over here, we'll do a few. Now, back here, we've got a bunch, and I kind of like this little row. And what I'm going to do is just keep my brush the way it is, and I'm just going to kind of tap in. So very lightly, you're not spreading it apart. And these will be smaller in the background. So you're just tapping the color without spreading the bristles. So it's light pressure. And then as you come forward, then you can get a little heavier pressure. Now right here, it's kind of in the shade right in this area. So I'm keeping that fairly light, or fairly dark, I mean. And then there's a little hydrangea ball right here. Okay. Now I'm going to wipe this brush off, and we're just going to come and get white. So I want as much of this purple off. So I'm wiping that off on paper towel. Let's come get white. Okay. And right back here, we can kind of tap in some hints of some white wildflowers growing. You're not seeing exactly what they are. Just little spots of white. And here. Let's get a little bit of Pueblo with that. So that's this kind of rusty orange color. And it starts to resemble the color of the daisies we're going to put down here in the foreground. Might be some little paintbrush out there too. Let's get a little magenta with that Pueblo. Oops, I'm over here. Okay, so it's kind of impressionistic looking, just the impression of flowers, because it's way far away. Little taps here and there. Okay. All right, now we can come to our flat brush. So I'm going to use my 8 flat. Let's load it with white. All white. And right in here, we're just going to pull little daisies. Chisel edge strokes all coming to the center of the flower. Some shorter, some longer. The shorter versions will create the look of the flowers being more at an angle to you. So short in the back, wide on the sides, and then short in the front. We'll do one more here. And let's just have one coming off the bottom right here. All right, now wipe that brush off, and then we're going to come get that Pueblo with magenta on 1/2. So these are going to be more orangey, but bright from that pink magenta. Okay, we'll come right in here. Right, little short strokes in the front. And we'll have one here. Okay. And then I wanted to wipe off that brush one last time. Let's come get some white. And we'll tap in some Queen Anne's lace right here. Just a little hint of it right there. One right here. Little lacy caps like that, and then we'll come in with our script liner. do one here. Okay, now corner of this brush, I'm going to come and get, we need some yellow ochre. Yellow ochre right here on the corner of that brush. And I'm going to come into the centers of my daisies and we're going to tap in the center there. Okay, and then you can get some magenta with that corner as well and come right at the base of each of those. Okay, then we can come into the center. Let's get some brown. So burnt umber will come right into these. On the corner of that brush, you just tap in that center in there. And then we'll get a little yellow ochre with that. Right there. All right, and then let's finish with our script liner. And let's get some inky alfalfa here. Grab a little bit of white. Okay, and you can come on these, oh, we need that darker. Let's go with a little bit of brown on these lace caps here. So that's alfalfa with some burnt umber. Just so they can better understand what those are. Okay. And maybe pull a stem down from that. The ones that are up close, it's kind of a good idea to have some kind of a stem. So that you get that better feel of them being closer. Okay. I think that was a lot of fun, and let's just back up here so we can see our pretty wild field. Let's just back up here so we can see our wildflower field in front of our blue barn. This was created using inspiration generated by artificial intelligence, and I hope you enjoyed that lesson. I'm getting some inky color here, and we'll sign. And that will be done. And there you go. Thank you for joining me again today on Paintabilities. Come back next week. We will have one final lesson using artificial intelligence generated design inspiration. Have a wonderful day. See you soon. Bye-bye.